Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. To discuss U.S. national labs and their role in AI development, please join us in welcoming Dr. Thomas Mason, Director of Los Alamos National Laboratory, Dr. Ken Budil, Director of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Dr. Johnny Green, Director of Savannah River National Laboratory, and the Honorable Mac Thornberry, SCSP Board Member. The conversation will be moderated by Nina Badger, Associate Director for Fusion at SCSP.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm truly honored to be here today, joined on stage by 3 national laboratory directors, as well as a former representative, but more importantly, 4 incredible public servants. So just to talk a little bit about how we're going to frame the conversation today, we'll start with a little bit into the science, the AI accelerated science. The next part will be looking more at how do we secure the future of these missions. And then the third part will be a little bit more, what does collaboration look like? What do the public, the private, the academia, how do we work together to make this happen? But before we get into some of the more technical things, I want to talk to our panelists a little bit and talk about why are you here? Why are you here on the stage talking about national labs and AI? What has brought you to serve year after year in these capacities? And Dr. Mason, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm the director of Los Alamos National Lab. Some of you may have heard of it. We celebrated our 80th anniversary about 2 years ago. We released a promotional video that you probably saw. And actually, what we do today is not that different from our birth story in terms of bringing the best science and technology to bear on the most pressing national security problems. And advances in computing and high-performance computing has been part of that story since the 1940s. And the way we think about artificial intelligence is this is just the next step of using the tremendous power of the computational resources that we have to advance our science and engineering missions.
So I'm Kim Budil. I'm the director at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. We were founded in 1952, quite literally to be the counterculture to Los Alamos. So we also work in the national security space. And over the many decades of our existence, we have also had a long legacy in computing. Our first procurement in 1952 was a UNIVAC-1, a supercomputer of the day. And today we're home to El Capitan, which debuted at #1 on the top 500 list not too long ago. We're also really known for our fusion research. So Livermore, it may have been on your radar for our achievement of fusion ignition a few years back. So for me, as an experimental physicist, arriving here as a graduate student, it was just the most amazing place to do science and service at the same time. And that's really what's kept me in this business all this time.
Thank you. I'm Johnny Green, Director of Savannah River National Laboratory. We're not in Savannah, Georgia. We're in Aiken, South Carolina, near Augusta, Georgia. And we've been around for around 75 years. A lot of the work that we do is related to how do you treat a lot of the nuclear materials from the Manhattan Project and also from the Cold War, with a focus on national security, environmental stewardship, and energy resilience. And we are an applied research and development laboratory, and we use artificial intelligence tools to help us advance our work in those 3 mission areas.
Mac Thornberry, a former political person, including time as chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. And I would say, like a lot of us who grew up during the Cold War, we really thought that strategic nuclear issues were the most important thing. When I was in Congress, I had a chance to represent the Pantex nuclear weapons plant, and that gave me the opportunity to dig deep into our nuclear weapons complex and have tremendous admiration for what these folks do every single day.
Thank you all. So Dr. Mason, I'd like to start with you. At Los Alamos, AI is being integrated into core research and national security missions, adding another layer of complexity to a lot of these the missions that are happening there. How would you summarize that impact across the board? What's AI doing?
Well, I think there's 2 different thrusts really in terms of how we're seeing AI deployed in the lab. One of them is no different than any other large business. We have a lot of things that we have to do to run our business and tools that can help us do that more efficiently, more effectively, streamline, what can be kind of arcane management processes and so on is a good thing. That's largely, I would say, in the mainstream of what the commercial offerings are seeking to address. It's important, we're excited about it, but the thing that has us really excited is more the use of artificial intelligence to accelerate the pace of progress in the science and engineering that we do. And to that end, we are investing a lot in terms of the hardware. About a year ago, we took delivery of a new NVIDIA Grace Hopper supercomputer called Venado. We spent about a year working in kind of open science domain on problems like fusion, which I'm sure Kim will talk about, materials science, biology, predicting space weather, essentially taking the scientific databases that we have and using them as the raw material, the training data for artificial intelligence. We're actually in the process now of moving that Venado supercomputer onto our classified network, where we're standing up the OpenAI advanced models. For the first time, they've made them available as raw model weights. And what we plan to do there is take some of our important nuclear security data and understanding, couple it with the advanced reasoning models, and use that to help us go faster, solve really complex problems, not in decadal timescales, but hopefully more on kind of year-ish timescales. And it's important that we do that because we see a lot of demands, going back to that nuclear deterrence mission that Matt mentioned, where the only way we're going to be able to meet the national need is to go faster, and I think AI will serve to accelerate our progress significantly.
It's incredible stuff happening right now, and Livermore is the same. I realize I'm going to start all of these questions with X Laboratory is a leader in, but longtime leader in high-performance computing and AI. What are some of the most transformative AI applications you're seeing on the horizon? What are we accelerating towards?
So we're seeing a lot of things change very fast. And I'll just start by framing what AI is changing at heart. So it changes the way you think about data, it changes the way you think about simulation, and it changes the way you think about building things. So for us, in the data arena, we do this research on fusion. We do these very complex experiments. We take tons and tons of data. Often you take that data and a human being distills it down to 1 or 2 numbers that we can then use to begin to advance our models and try to design the next experiment. With AI tools, we can start looking at all that data and make our models much smarter, much faster. So the ability to use very large data sets and identify patterns and science in those data sets is really changing very fast. In the modeling and simulation arena, we're modeling much more complex processes. So for example, we have AI-enabled workflows where we're modeling biological systems and designing drugs and therapeutics. So we've taken a process that could take many years to develop a new potential drug down to weeks to months to develop new candidate drugs. We recently had, in partnership with a small company, Bridge Bio, our first computationally designed RAS cancer targeting therapeutics go into human clinical trials. So in the next 10 years, everything you thought about healthcare is going to look very different. I mean, we are going to live much better lives, much longer. And I told my kids I'm going to live to be 120, so I'm all in. The other thing we're doing, as Tom said, is we make things. So the whole way you think about developing and building technology has changed. You used to design a technology, pose a problem, design a technological solution, engineer it, and then build it. With tools like additive manufacturing, design optimization, AI-driven manufacturing loops, it changes the kind of technology you can conceive of. So everything about that cycle is different now. And so we're seeing new technology pathways in all sorts of applications, everything from energy to national security and beyond. So very exciting.
Yeah. And Dr. Green, at Savannah River, another leader in incredibly complex systems. And as AI adds this additional layer that is making us rethink so many parts of the line, what are things that are happening right now at Savannah River that are redefining how science gets done And is it forcing you to rethink any longstanding science assumptions you've had?
Sure, thank you. So, in addition to using AI in some areas of nuclear deterrence and also in fusion related to the fuel cycle, we use it quite a bit for environmental management, environmental stewardship work. So, we have a tool that we've developed that takes sensor data from a lot of sites. It could be groundwater, it could be atmospheric data. We've got over several decades, tons of data, and we use the tool we call Ultimus to help us be more in a proactive stance instead of reactive. Right now you do a lot of sampling, on maybe a quarterly basis, and you maybe figure out if there are issues in the field on a much slower time scale, but we're looking at real-time data and fusing it in with AI to understand and predict where issues may occur or how to prevent issues in the future. And so it's a multi-lab effort. We're working with Los Alamos and PNNL. I think MIT is involved also. And it's something that we really think can be a game changer in terms of safety for reducing exposure, how to reduce costs, and how to improve efficiency quite a bit. The environmental management legacy is hundreds of billions of dollars to clean it up, and we think this tool can reduce that by over half by using some of these AI approaches. And another area that I think all the labs are looking at is for our operations. How do we use AI to help us run procurements differently, how to operate more efficiently? So that's another area that we're looking at as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Thornberry, as you know very well, the national labs play a central role in U.S. science leadership and also national security. As AI accelerates these kind of discoveries, what are the most effective ways that we tell that science story? So this is an example on this panel at the Expo, but what are the most effective ways that everyone kind of comes together and is able to tell that science story to the public and to Congress?
A place that I would start is what these folks, especially the weapons labs, have done over the last 30 years. And I would say a credible nuclear deterrent is the foundation upon which all our defense efforts rest. And yet we have not tested a nuclear weapon since 1992. So you build these things in the 70s and 80s, you store them in a barn, you can look under the hood and see if something's changing, you can take some pieces off and test those, but you can't turn it on. You can't really test it. And so what they have is lots of scientific data over the tests we did before 1992, and then lots of data on other experiments and tests. And so the way that AI can help make sense of all that data and make sure that they can continue to provide us a safe, reliable, secure stockpile of nuclear weapons in the future is just amazing. And I would just say this, it's the most consequential mission that I can imagine, is to make sure the nukes are safe. I mean, biotech has lots of important things, but if you look at the nuclear weapons complex, what they do for us every day that we have come to take for granted since the end of the Cold War, the application of AI for their mission is probably as important as any I can imagine.
And building on that, I think getting into this idea of securing the future, how do we make sure that all of this is secure, the research, the nuclear weapons, all aspects of this down the line. Los Alamos is at the intersection of the national defense and technology. When you came and spoke on our podcast, you referred to this idea of the fourth age, which I thought was really interesting, and I would love for the audience to hear a little bit more about. And so what is the fourth age, and how does research security, how do these ideas of security fit into that?
Well, the fourth age, having grown up reading Tolkien, you probably, those of you who know The Lord of the Rings, know that The Lord of the Rings was the end of the third age. That's when the ring got thrown into Mount Doom. We actually don't know what happened in the fourth age because Tolkien never wrote that book. But you know, the analogy for Los Alamos is, for us, the first stage was the Manhattan Project. You can go see the movie. The second stage was the Cold War. So from mid to late 40s until the mid to late 80s, about 40 years, we built the deterrent that was the backbone of US national security, helped us prevail in the Cold War confrontation with the Soviet Union. The end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, end of the Cold War, we entered this post-Cold War era. So that was the third age. And the post-Cold War era was one where actually we thought that democracy and capitalism had prevailed. It was the successful system. The rest of the world would adopt it. We'd compete economically and technologically, but probably not militarily. There would be a declining role for military strength and nuclear weapons in regulating global affairs. And, you know, that was about 30 years that period lasted. We talked about the flat world. Around about 10 years ago or so, things began to change. You saw a change in approach in Russia with, you know, disruptive and now ongoing real military conflict in Europe. China abandoned its previous policy of peaceful rise, began to, you know, do significant investments in their military capabilities. We now find ourselves in a world where deterrence is of elevated visibility. It never went away, but elevated visibility now. And there is a substantial, it's not just a, you know, military confrontation. In fact, we hope that certainly with China, we don't wind up in a military confrontation. There's a substantial element of technological and economic competition, and artificial intelligence is very much in the mix in terms of that technological and economic competition. But it can also make really important contributions in the kind of hardcore defense side of things as well. And in fact, as we saw during the Cold War, the second era, a lot of those investments in national security defense-related technologies are things that actually propel our economic well-being. And you know, there are plenty of examples. GPS would be one. You know, GPS was invented so that submarines that were going to launch ballistic missiles would be able to figure out where they were, because you can't hit your target if you don't know where you are. But GPS has had a transformational economic effect in the commercial sector in ways that were completely unanticipated when that idea was conceived. So I think, you know, as we seek to advance technology that's important for our national security, it needs to be happening hand in glove with the kind of industry players and academic researchers that are going to help generate some of those unexpected benefits that flow into the broader economy.
Yeah, we'll touch on a little bit more of that collaboration piece later, but Dr. Budil, as we've spoken, when the stakes are so high, when it comes to nuclear stewardship or fusion ignition, how do you build trust in those high stakes environments, especially when traditional validation tools are maybe starting to fall a bit short?
That's an excellent question. For us, it's not enough to know that we get an answer. The answer has to be right, and we have to understand the path by which we got to that answer. So as several of the panelists have noted, you know, we have this critically important no-fail mission that we serve day in and day out to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of the nation's nuclear deterrent. The way we've done that for the last 30 years is by building this incredible set of scientific tools and engineering prowess to support that deterrent. So when you add something new into the mix, like AI, it's critically important not just to understand what the tools can do, but how they do that and how we can safely and securely deploy them in our environments. The best way to do that is to do it. It's for us to participate in this ecosystem and help drive the technology forward. That gives you two things. One is it gives you the best chance of getting the biggest benefits from these new tools, but it also means you have a community of researchers who spend their day job time in the national security community who can understand where these technologies might be going. We can understand where there might be unintended consequences or application spaces where you don't want to use these types of tools. It's also a great window into what others might be doing with these tools and technologies. And so it's really important for us to not try to hold back where the industry is going, where the technology is going, but to really be mainstreamed into the middle of it and be real participants. I know in our national security missions, AI is not new to us. I mean, the current toolkit is new and emerging and changing very fast, but we've been working in computing and advanced technologies like this for many decades. So for me, it's just such an exciting moment to think about how much more we will be able to do and what a good bellwether will be for the safety and security of these tools as they get more broadly deployed into society, because we're going to look at it from the public interest perspective.
Thank you. And Dr. Green, just to kind of get right to the crux of it, how do we continue to innovate at pace and at scale while protecting sensitive technologies and IP, especially as we start to see more collaboration, as you pull in industry, as you pull in academia? It's an interesting, unprecedented time, so how do you make sure that that happens simultaneously?
Thanks for that question. Not an easy one. I guess the first thing I would say is things are just changing so fast. The rate of innovation is just like we've never seen before. And in the national labs, you know, for the most part, we're probably not going to have our biggest impact off of intellectual property. But I think we will by partnering with others and help advancing this important work. And so I think collaboration is very important for us to help drive and move innovation forward. But then also, Tom and Kim both talked about this a little bit. We're in this interesting space where AI has an economic impact, but there's also a national security component to it as well. And so the United States, we really need to make sure that we are staying on the leading edge, and the Secretary has talked about this Manhattan Project for AI. And so we want to, partner with the Secretary and our fellow lab colleagues to really make sure that the United States is advancing in this area and making sure that we are able to not only have a strong nuclear deterrent, but also have AI capabilities that are on par with anyone on the globe, and do it in a way to protect our data and keep it safe, which we know how to do very well based on the kind of work that we're doing and what the NNSA labs are doing work with OpenAI, taking that behind the fence. So I think that's going to be key, is those partnerships that we're starting to see right now, and making sure that we're building the American workforce. I think the researcher who understands how to use AI will have an advantage over the researcher who doesn't know how to use it. And so bringing those opportunities together in this important national mission is critical.
Yeah, and I think I'll skip because we're getting into this collaboration piece, which is so critical to so much of this. And Mr. Thornberry, my question is more so, what are the biggest hurdles, whether it's technical, policy, workforce related, operating in maybe a fiscally constrained environment, to fully realizing the promise of AI in the National Lab ecosystem, the greater ecosystem, and how might these public-private partnerships close the gap from experiences you've seen in the past, from what you're seeing play out right now? And honestly, I'll let everyone kind of chime in on that because I know it's relevant to all of you.
Well, I would just offer these thoughts. Number one is they've been doing public-private partnerships for a long time, because it really is a grouping of companies that run these labs. So it's not what we usually think of it. It's not all government employees that are doing the day-to-day management. It is a voluntary group of companies, and so they've been doing this. The other thing they've been doing, and I think this is really important, that these folks have been grappling with ethical considerations of applying controversial technologies since their beginning. And so there's not a perfect analogy between what they've been grappling with in the nuclear area and AI, but there probably are some lessons to be learned from this experience over decades, as they try to, as there are these waves of, AI is going to bring the end of the world. Well, they've been dealing with the end of the world, for
we invented it
for a long time. So I think there are some unique contributions, really, that these folks can make here. Last point I would make is we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. You know, their budgets, I mean, you've just gotten a glimpse talking about drugs and all these environmental stuff, all these things that these labs advance with some of the smartest people in the country. We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish when it comes to allocating resources.
So, you know, one thing to keep in mind is that the massive scale investment and really huge technical advances that have been made by the major AI companies, most of which are US-based companies, is a huge strategic advantage for us. And you know, when you look at something on the scale of Stargate or the corresponding investments that other hyperscalers are making, actually the federal government is not going to be making investments at that scale, at the $100 billion, $500 billion scale. But the good news is we don't have to. You know, the Anthropics, the Googles, the OpenAIs, they are making a massive investment in a core capability that then becomes a platform on which we can build our more bespoke capabilities, you know, through suitably structured partnerships. Doesn't mean we don't need to invest public dollars for those things that have public purposes and no commercial model around them. Private companies aren't going to do that. But we don't have to replicate what they're doing. We just need to figure out the right way to partner with them and you know, leverage their expertise and what they're good at and bring to it the data that we have, the scientific understanding that we have, and the mission that we have. You know, and there is, just to remind you, there is no commercial market for nuclear weapons, and that we think is a good thing. But it means we're not going to be able to, you know, purchase on the commercial market that sort of expertise. So it's a question of structuring the right sort of arrangements where we get the benefits of their expertise and investments. I think we bring something to the table in terms of the expertise we have, the data that we have, and the competencies that we have that can help advance the ultimate goal of, you know, artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, especially in a world where that is achieved through reinforcement learning on really hard math and science problems. Because we have really hard math and science problems. Yep. And we have data, and we have the scientific staff who understand it. So I think there's a really fruitful partnership that can be formed around that common interest.
And I'll just note, we have many of these relationships already. We've been leaders in high-performance computing for decades, and the way we've done that is working with the private sector. So if you go to the AMD booth, you can see the little scale model of El Capitan. We worked with HPE and AMD to build that machine, and part of that is co-designing these environments so that they serve the industry's needs and our special needs for the kinds of problems that we run. In AI, it's the same thing. We sit right at the eastern edge of the Bay Area. We're working with all the AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, X, Meta. You know, everybody wants to be in the place where all of this data and big compute exists. So putting together a little bit of public investment with, as Tom said, this massive private investment in building the foundation models is just such a huge opportunity for the country. And again, companies are going to pursue really interesting applications and business models to make this industry go forward. But there are a set of considerations for the public sector that you really want people who are thinking about the public interest and the national security implications of these tools to be entrained in. So I think it's a win-win for all parties.
And the only additional thing I'll add is, in addition to the public-private partnerships, is our academic partners. You know, the labs have, you know, several close partnerships with various universities and academic partners, and once again, they're bringing in fresh ideas. They're students and interns which come through our laboratories and spend a bit of time with us. Postdoctoral students, graduate students, they're bringing in fresh ideas and approaches, and that interchange of ideas helps keep us at the cutting edge and also leverages the strengths of our academic partners in the university as well. So it's a holistic collaboration approach that we need to advance this forward.
Thank you. I mean, it's pretty incredible. The U.S. is known for its innovation ecosystem, and this is just some of the most incredible examples of it. And we're running on time, low on time a little bit right now, but before we end, I would love to hear kind of what would be your greatest takeaway from this conversation. If everyone goes home and says, you know, I watched a panel on national labs and AI, what do you want them to say was the great takeaway? And also an opportunity for a little plug about something maybe you're really excited about, which is a selfish nudge to Dr. Budil to talk about fusion. And so I'm staffing on the Fusion Commission, and it's so exciting. So I'll start with you, Dr. Mason.
Well, I think for me, one of the most important takeaways of the last year where we've been using this Venado NVIDIA supercomputer on some of our open science activities prior to moving it to our classified network was that we could do some amazing things. I mean, we did some really interesting work building on the Llama open weight models to actually develop a kind of agentic fusion scientist to help optimize target capsules for NIF. And so we've really seen how promising it can be, but the most important thing we learned over the course of that kind of 1 year burn-in, if you will, was that we are not operating at the scale we need to be at. That computer, which it's about a $100 million investment, has 2,560 Grace Hopper super chips. About 10 of our staff could fully utilize its capability. So it's been really exciting to see the work that we can do, but it has really reminded us that we're going to need more of a national scale effort to get this to where it needs to be. It can't simply be something that we're kind of carving out of our overhead budgets, which is how we've been approaching it up until this point.
Yep. So I would say, I think it's important for people to appreciate the critical role that the public sector is going to play in how these tools and technologies impact your daily lives. And we've seen this in many areas. Tom mentioned the ancillary benefits of the work we do in the national labs to the public at large are many and myriad, and most of them weren't anticipated. So from the technology for EUV lithography to microwave impulse radar, so your car beeps when you don't back into something, to this new drug design work we're doing. These are institutions that can take these tools and take them to places we didn't anticipate. And so I hope that investment feels worthwhile. And the last thing I'll say is leadership matters. And so when we think about national security, economic competitiveness, national competitiveness, what we do in science and technology is seen by everyone around the world. So when we had our fusion moment, so 2.5 years ago, we had the first experiment by any technique that produced more fusion energy out than required to drive the experiment, fusion ignition. Everyone in the world was watching that shot. That said something about what the US can do when we put our mind to it and we come together as a country. And I think this AI revolution is another moment for us to show what we can do.
Dr. Green.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited about what we're doing in terms of the environmental monitoring work. We're doing a lot of work at the Savannah River site to help with some of the nuclear material treatment issues there. And we're hoping that can transition to the hands of regulators and be used in a regulatory framework. We're in a demonstration phase right now. We want to get that into the hands of regulators. And we also think we have an approach that can be used at multiple sites. As Mac mentioned and others, we've got tons of data and tons of learning at a lot of different sites. There are about 15 left around the complex where we need to complete the cleanup of those. And so we're extremely excited about that. And the other thing that we're known for is tritium and tritium research. Now, borrow from Tom Mason, who just gave me this little saying here. Tritium is like bacon. It's the secret ingredient for nuclear deterrence and fusion. So when you think of Savannah River National, think about bacon and that secret ingredient that just makes everything a little bit better.
Love it.
Mr. Thornberry.
I like bacon. I'm struck, again, I focus primarily on the national security aspects. I'm struck we are 80 years past the end of World War II, and for the last 80 years, folks at these institutions have done as much as anybody to keep us safe and free. And yet we're now in a world where we have not one, but two near-peer nuclear competitors, and we really haven't sorted our way through that, especially in a time when we're still not going to test the things that help keep us safe and free. So the challenge that they face moving forward is as great, I think, as it's ever been. AI is a critical tool that helps them meet that challenge, but bottom line, it's the people that make the difference.
And that's a great way for us to end here. Thank you all for being here. If we could give a round of applause to these incredible panelists. I have spent the past year working more closely with some of these representatives from national labs and have just been in awe of what's happening. And thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.